Welcome to another Ariaswave update. Now, in this market update, I'm going to talk about three charts. First, we're going to talk about the Dow Jones, and then we're going to talk about the US dollar, and then, of course, XLM. Now, there's been a change in the way I see the US dollar. Simply put, there was a rule broken in one of the waves that was meant to go down, and it didn't. So that's led me to have a real good think about exactly what's going on in the Dow Jones. Now, as you can see, I've got a completely labeled D wave. Okay, this D wave is basically complete. Okay, now, am I saying that there's going to be a crash? Well, if the D wave is complete, then there's going to be an E wave, right? And that E wave is most likely going to be starting soon. Okay. Now, the key components to why I changed this analysis has a lot to do with this area here and also this same area in the US dollar during that period of time, especially during the elections and just before it. This particular pattern is, in my opinion, a complete correction. Okay, so therefore there is no looking for expanded D waves any longer. Okay, and that's because we've had, like I said, confirmation in the US dollar. Now, if you look at this, we have our first A in brackets, and then you had an A, B, C, D, E. Now, this E was fairly small, so initially I had my doubts about it. But once I had a look at what came later, this thing looks like a complete 5-wave move. Now, if this is a complete 5-wave move, that means that this D wave is either near completion or is at completion. And not to mention that even though it's a very weak looking wave, it's still shorter than the A wave, which is fairly strong and sharp looking right down the bottom here, right? So that is longer than this, right? And that's because this one started to really basically just become more, sloped on an angle, looking weaker, and that type of thing. Okay. So for me, I'm out of stocks. I've gotten out of stocks today, and I've just decided, you know what? It's better to be safe than sorry, especially when you've seen this kind of price action evolve over the last year and a few months. And to be honest with you, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. Okay. We are expecting a downturn, and that downturn could be happening very soon. Now, let's switch over to the US dollar. This is the one that has made me really think about what the deal is here. So instead of thinking that this thing was an ending, type, basically a type 1 weak wave E, I've just basically come to the conclusion now that this is a straight 5-wave move. Okay, so you had your wave 1 and your 2, fairly straightforward 2, and then you had five moves down for wave 3, and then now we have a 3-3-5, and this is the wave that I had to basically change back to the original idea that it was a D wave, right? Now, normally a D wave does not look that sharp, okay? But for the purpose of what's going on here and the subsequent price action, I have no choice but to label it as a D wave, okay? So I did say that if we break above this high, then the previous count would be invalidated. And we have seen that happen right now. Okay, so for me, the best course of action, simply put, is to wait for a complete 5-wave move to occur here for this to be finished, right, before we can say that this wave E is over. And I would dare say that I would go looking for something to break the wave 4 of wave 3. Okay, now we do have a wave 4 there for the larger pattern, but I'm just going to go to the lowest wave 4 and put a magenta line there. Okay, so once we break below that, that's when we're heading towards the final low of the US dollar, right? Now, this coincides with what I'm expecting in XLM, okay, and Bitcoin. One more move to the downside for the purpose of finishing off a pattern that started in March 2020. Okay, so all in all, it'll be wave 4 and then 5. Simply put, that's a 5-wave move. And this is also part of what I consider a CDE pattern on a larger degree, right? So if you're looking at the at the larger picture here, right, the C wave, you haven't seen a break below that. So to me, it's almost a given that we need to see something that's similar in length to the C, and that would most likely be down at around 87, 88. Could be higher, could be lower. So there is one more move coming to the downside to complete this E wave, which will complete the B wave before we start making our way up to complete this A wave zigzag that started in 2008. Okay, and once we see that happen, I believe this will coincide with the C wave down that's coming in cryptos, right? So I'll switch over to the Bitcoin chart quickly, right? Just so I can remind you a little bit about what we're expecting here, okay? So we are expecting one more move up to make one more all-time high, and then we're expecting some kind of move to the downside, which will be a C wave, right? Now, how low that C wave goes, well, we're going to keep an eye on the US dollar chart to see how it's progressing in relation to this. Now, back to XLM. Same thing, in my opinion, is happening. This particular wave B was just a different kind of wave B, more like a type 2 expanded zigzag. Also looking for one move up to complete before we start to see a move down in wave C, right? Now, what comes after this is actually really, really cool, really important, and I'm not going to reveal it just yet, right? And the reason is because basically it's a zigzag down in the US dollar after we see that high that final high, which will make this C wave down, right? There's going to be obviously more price action coming after that, but I'm not going to get into that yet because first of all, we need to make a new high in XLM followed by a big crash in wave C. All right, so this just takes us back to what's happening in the US dollar, right? We are almost at the end of wave 4, right? I will be keeping a very close eye on this over the coming days because this will be the end of basically it'll signify the start of the last move down in the US dollar before we start to see Some pretty insane price action in cryptos and in the Dow Jones. Okay, so this is why I always say, if you're wrong, you need to understand why you're wrong, right? And Ariaswave gives you the ability to do so. Okay, and in this case, because we broke that high, it was very significant. So therefore, we have to make a change to the count. And in this case, I've made a change to the overall count. So this is going to help us time this correctly and proceed with analysis that's going to lead us into the future. So hopefully you found this video interesting and informative, and I'll catch you on the next one.